technical issue, and if I'm the wrong
So good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon session of our meeting. Now we are just solving some problems with the connection with the next moderator from our roundtable, because Professor Helena Pereira is not going to be here. It's going to be moderating from Lisbon, and so just some seconds more just to establish the connection. Thank you.
Welcome back to the second part of the session on clinical academic centers in Europe, challenges and opportunities. We now enter the second roundtable under the theme Improving Partnerships and Networking Among Clinical Academic Centers, which will be moderated by Professora Helena Pereira, President of the Foundation for Science and Technology. We will have 3 themes and 3 speakers. The first will be on improving internal partnerships in clinical academic centers, which will be presented by Frédéric Gautrin from the Centre Hospitalier Régional Universitaire de Lille. The second theme is improving partnerships on clinical academic centers with the external community, and will feature Eduardo Anselmo de Castro, Vice President of the Regional Development Coordination Committee of the Central Region of Portugal, as a speaker. Finally, the theme Collaboration as Promoter of Innovation in Improving Health. The example of academic health centers partnerships will feature a presentation by Stephen Cantor, President of the Association of Academic Health Centers. The discussion follows. Those who are watching online can participate via online chat on YouTube. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope you hear me well and see me also. It is a pleasure to be here coordinating this session, and thank you for participating with us, both remotely and in presence. This is really a very important session on these clinical academic centers. I am the president of the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology, and one of the missions that we have is to foster science in general in Portugal by funding science in its different instruments. And of course, one very determining factor for enhancing science are the institutional bodies and the synergies between them, those who make research and technological development and innovation. So we have a system with different hundreds, in fact 312 research units of different type, different dimensions, and of course working in different areas. But we want also synergies between the research, between also the dissemination or the application of the results of the research, and also on the teaching, the formation levels associated to this research. In medical science and in terms of health, the academic centers are paradigmatic for this synergy. Their aim is to combine both the formation of new professionals in this area, to combine that with a research environment and a strong strong research outputs, and also, of course, the application of these research outputs, which are mainly at the hospital environments. So we are profoundly committed to enhance and to support the clinical academical centers in Portugal. We are at this time initiating a process of evaluation of the existing clinical academic centers, so that we can make a sort of state of the art of what is happening and the synergies between these three components. And of course, we want to learn from experiences in other countries and in Europe. So this roundtable in this afternoon is really very much to the point in this area. Thank you so much for being here with us. The first speaker will be Frederik Gottrand. Frederik, thanks for being with us.
Yeah.
You will be talking about the improving the internal partnerships within the clinic academic centers. I'm eager to hear you from your experience and to learn from your experience. Please, go on.
Thank you, Elena, for your invitation, and thank you, dear colleagues, for allowing me to share how local experience in my clinical academic environment in Lille, in the north of France. I'm here because I'm the research vice president of my university hospital, but I'm also I'm a pediatrician basically, but I'm also a professor at the faculty of medicine, recently becoming sport and health science, which is belonging to the University of Lille. And finally, I'm working in preclinical and clinical medical research on gut development and inflammation in an INSERM research unit. INSERM is the largest national research body in medical research. So next slide, please. Briefly, the agenda I will follow is first to explain a little bit who we are, and we'll try to show how diverse we are. And that's the goal of my day-to-day practice, is to try to join and to collaborate and to put all people around the same table, but coming from very diverse area. So the partners in our local environment on the north region of France is, of course, the university hospital called CHU. I will show you some what is this hospital and what we are doing in research there. And then the Faculty of Sports Science and Health, which was previously the Faculty of Medicine, and our big university, which is very recently moving towards a new type of university in France. There have been a lot of money put by the government to try to push a university to be very large, to be very competitive, to improve excellence of teaching, excellence of research, and which will include some school of engineers, architectures, design, and political science, which are in our campus, close to our campus. And the second part of the agenda will be to show you how we try to improve internal partnership, how we organize, and it's mostly around a consultation body, which name is CRBSP. I will explain a little bit, where we put around the table every month all the partners, researcher, director, deans, all people who are the capability to start new projects, but also to fund them and to support them. And I will give you a very clear recent example to show how we sometimes and most of the time, hopefully, reach our goal to have this synergy internally. Next slide, please. So this is our hospital campus, which is very large. It's one of the largest in France. You see here a picture from a plane and showing all the different buildings all in the same campus. And something very important is 3 of the faculties: Faculty of Medicine, Faculty of Dentistry, and Faculty of Pharmacy is very close to the campus. And also we have very close to the campus a space where startups around health is located, helping to join a clinician, researcher, and these startups to try to have new products, new companies, helping them to be very close to the researcher. Next slide, please. So some numbers, I will not go too much in details, but you see that this is a very big university hospital, 1.5 million patients every year, one of the biggest maternity wards public maternity wards in France, graft emergency calls, and so on. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, it's a number 1 employer in our region, and it's almost 16,000 professionals working in the hospital. So it's a very big company, if you can say that. And there are a lot of different professions: nurse, administrative, technical, medical secretary, engineers, whatever you want. Next slide. I go fast on that to spend a little bit more. Next slide, please. Can I have? Yeah, thank you. And in terms of research, it's university hospital is 60 million euros for the budget of research. Is a lot of patients, including clinical trials. It's 330 professional nurses and research assistants dedicated only to research and startups, and as presented, and some good scientific article published every year. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, we have 4 research priorities. It's not very original: cancer, neuroscience, metabolic, cardiovascular, inflammation, but also longevity, prevention, aging also. Next slide. And these priorities are shared with the university and also with the national research body, which are located in our campus. Next slide, please. And so our hospital is not the only one, and we are close to Belgium, and we have close contact to our Belgian partners with a lot of collaboration. And also around Lille, we have 10 public hospitals who are grouped in a public group, and we're trying to push them to be associated to our clinical research and research projects. Next slide. And so the budget of our hospital is 1.3 billion euros each year. So it's big, and investments is 50 million every year, depending, of course, of the economic situations. This year it will be lower. Next slide. The other second partners is this new faculty of health science, which are the joining of medicine, health engineering school, dentistry, pharmacy, and sports science. And just this slide, sorry, it's French, but to show that is more than 15,000 students and here is 330 teachers and professors working in this new, very big, one of the largest in France, because we join all these partners together in a faculty of health science. So it's a big partners. Next slide. And the Faculty of Health Science is belonging to a very big university, which is moving now, thanks to a program in France pushing university to become largest, and we are moving during the next 2 years in an experimental public institutions, regrouping our university with 10 different faculties, but architecture schools, Sciences Po, which is a political science famous school in France, architectures and journalism, and also engineering school, all together in partnership with this National Research Institute I mentioned. And for medical research is mostly INSERM, but of course we have CNRS and INRIA, which is a mathematician and artificial intelligence. And close to that, we have also an institute for research which is called Pasteur Institute of Lille. You probably know Pasteur Institute in Paris, but there is another one in Lille, which is also very active in terms of research. So you know that you understand in this brief presentation that the number of partners locally on our campus working in clinical research, medical research, not clinical research, medical research, is very wide, with different institutions, different type of decision, politics, budgets, priorities. And our goal is to try, next slide, is to try to improve and to put all these people all together. And this slide is just showing that we very strongly collaborate. And if you look at publication, as an example, the number of publication published, scientific publication published these last 5 years, you can see that almost 50% are co-signed by somebody from the university hospital. And so we are very linked all together. And for my personal example is that I am paid by the university hospital for half of my salary, and paid by my university for half of my salary. So my interest is to try to join these two partners very closely to avoid schizophrenic attitude and competition between local institutions, all devoted to research and medical research. So next slide. Health science, it's just a picture, is here on the upper right part of this on these figures, showing that health science and clinical medicine is a highly specialized and highly seated domain in our university. So we are very proud of that, and we want to push us to become higher specialized and higher recognized in this area. Next slide. And to try to have all these people around the table, we built a unique concentration body. The name is, it's in French, is Committee for Research in Biomedical and Public Health Science. And I will not go too much in details, but I want to show you that we have members, 12 members, 4 are nominated by the university and Faculty of Medicine and Faculty of Health Science. 4 are nominated by our university hospital, and 4 are from the national research bodies representative. And around that, these are our gray matter people who are pushing. We are active researcher in different area, of course, of medical science. The institution representative are there. So we have the president of the university, we have the dean of our medical school, we have our CNO, and François-René Pruvot, our president of medical community, and we have also the national research body local representative there. at each meeting every month, all together around the table, and we are discussing. I will show you all the hot topic research to help the different institutions to go together in one way rather than fighting from each other, and to try to answer for calls with only one project or discuss project before, and to improve our chance to get money and to get funding, because competition, as you know, all is very, very hard, and we have a lot of invited personalities representing, for example, the Pasteur Institute, representing. We have an hospital specializing in cancer, so they are there. There are the director of PhD school. So we try to have the most important people around the table. Next slide. So just to show you what we are doing, we have one meeting every month, 10 meetings per year. 24 to 30 people are around the table for each meeting. And we have also, and it's very important for us, external and invited personality every year to improve our knowledge, to open our mind, to explain us what is going on in different country or different region or different area of research in our field. Next slide. So it's a summary of what we discuss. We have strategic goals. I will show you some example on that. For example, as in many countries, every 5 years, all the research labs in our campus are challenged, have to again be visited by external bodies who decided if you can go on or not, and if you be funded or not to go on with your research program. And so with this CRBSP, this committee, we are preparing our strategy to, for example, to push people to join together, to have a larger labs, and to be stronger and to be more visible and to get more chance to be appointed by INSERM, CNRS, or any other kind of national bodies. We also discuss our thematic axis and priority, local priorities. And as an example, when COVID came in our region last year, with the CRBSP, with this committee, we'll put very fastly a task force, a research task force, to try to start research program or diagnosis or treatment on any kind of things in parallel to fight against the epidemic. And so we were quite successful on 2 or 3 big projects, and we get a funding on 2 million euros by our new university to start very fastly research project, and we had some success and some good result and publication. So next slide. Here is the list of our invited personalities. So for example, the first is the region vice president, so it's for doing lobbying, positive lobbying for on our regional politic bodies. Another one was a French government representative. We had some national academic health research institutions, some academic clusters being presented. We discussed about ethical committee, scientific integrity, network or register. So very, very different areas of research have been discussed, and we had all these invited personalities coming to this these bodies, to this commission. Next slide. And lastly, I just want to take a few seconds to explain you a very concrete example. So we are on the period of a national, very ambitious, the call is RHU, Research Hospital, University Research Hospital. It's a number 4 calls, so it's money coming, a lot of money coming from the government, and it's a very competitive call. And so each of these projects will be funded 4 to 10 million euros, so it's quite large projects. But we know the call was announced in February 4th, and we have to send all the files and all the things that have been deadline for application. All the application have been to deadline for application is 1st of July. So we had a special meeting of this CRBSP, and we asked people to very rapidly send us letter of intent, and we received 7, and they were presented to a local selection committee. All members of this committee I just explained to you. We look carefully to eligibility criteria. We look at research priority of a campus. And at the end, we selected 4 projects. We are now being written, and we support them, and we'll give them for each of these project leader 30,000 euros for helping the project engineering for this for increasing their chance to get funded. And next slide. My last slide is to discuss the strengths and limitation of our solution. Research is very complicated world, I guess in France especially, because we are very, very, very bureaucratic, and a lot of bodies and a lot of people designing for each other. So this local committee allowed a better consultation and collaboration between people. We improve, and now it's very clear for all of us that we have a concept of global research on health, and not separating the preclinical research, the clinical, so which is in the INSERM at the university, and the clinical at the hospital, and transactional with companies. But it's only one research in health, on health. It increased, we believe that it increased our chance of success to research calls, and also for lobbying, for politics, and deciding where the public money will be put in research and education in our region. And it's also a way of pooling of means, because we are not so many people working really on research, and so putting all together around the table it's a way of pooling our means, which are limited. So there are limitations of this strategy. It's a very time-consuming one meeting every month. We have to prepare this meeting. I'm very involved in that, and every week I'll have a 2 hours phone call to prepare the next topic, and to invite the best people, and to have a clear conclusion at the end of this meeting. It needs a lot of diplomacy, because it's mainly a question of goodwilling of people, and individual personality is very important. And if, for example, our next CEO is not a fan of this way, he can stop everything, or the next dean can stop everything. So it's quite fragile. And at the end, it not 100% prevent individualist attitude, which is a French name, franc-tireur. I guess all of you understand this word, and we have quite some of our researchers who don't really want to discuss with the other, and want only to go alone and try to win the thing. So I hope that I've been quite clear, and will be happy at the end of the presentation to answer if you have questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Frédéric, for your talk. It was really enlightening, and all of us learned a lot from your presentation. You showed us this link between university and research and the hospitals, and of course a challenging synergy because of the dimension and diversity involved. Thank you so much. Now we will have our second speaker, Eduardo Anselmo de Castro, and Eduardo will talk to us about the community, the external community. Please, Eduardo, the screen is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure to speak with you. I'm not expert in any of the fields of health sciences. I'm speaking on the point of view of regional economic development. So it is a different perspective. What I want to say is that now Europe and Portugal, and in particular Central Region, where I'm now Vice President, is in a crossroads. It is in a situation where important decisions should be made. On one side, we are hopefully getting out of the epidemics, and we need to make strong investments to recover the economy and to open opportunities for new activities and for changing the economy of the regions. This is particularly important for Portugal, which is still in the transition from a developing country to a developed country. There were problems in this transition. First, it was the big financial crisis. Now we have the epidemics. And now I think we have good opportunities to change. And if we want to change, we need to look at the health cluster, because health cluster is a key element of this change everywhere, and in particular in Central Region. We are now developing or starting a strategic plan for the region, where we're going to look at what we should be done in the next 10 years. And in this plan, of course, the health sciences, the health cluster should play a very important role. So what should I say? First, health cluster, the elements of health cluster are key economic factors. First, they have a warranted fast growth. Something that I'm completely sure is that the weight of the health sectors in the global economy, in GDP, is going to increase. It's going to increase by demand factors. Population is aging. The willingness to have a healthy life, to improve the capacity to prolong our healthy life, means that health sectors in all the branches are increasingly important. Second, I think that artificial intelligence, robotization, and all these things will release a lot of labor force from many sectors, and will increase or will direct the labor force towards personal care, towards culture, towards entertainment, and towards health. So perhaps the doctors, the nurses, all the other technicians will save time because they have fantastic machines doing part of their work. But in turn, I think they will take care more of contacting personally with the patients, with the people, and the balance of all these things is, I think, that the number of people working in health sciences is going to increase. Also because robotization and artificial intelligence will make a lot of demand on the industries related with health sector, either software, all kinds of equipment and precision machines and so on. So I think that this cluster is going to increase significantly in terms of weight in the global GDP. But it's not an increase also only in weight, in number, it's a qualitative increase. I think that the personnel which is going to work in these sectors will be more skilled in average than it is now. Even now, it is a high skill group of sectors. Second, the health cluster is a technological driver, both internally, because there is a lot of research and technical progress in medicine, in all health, the other paramedical sectors, but also because it's going to push innovation in all kinds of sectors which provide something for the health cluster. I'm speaking about software, about all kinds of equipment and machinery, all kinds of materials, pharmaceuticals, bio products, whatever. So it is a huge list where the demands from the health cluster will increase technological progress and economy. So, in conclusion, health cluster is a basic element because it's related with well-being, but it's also answering to something which, in my opinion, is the biggest challenge for the next years, is population aging. Population, for example, can give you a number. Now, something like 18% of Portuguese population is above 65 years old. In 2040, this percentage will go to around 35%. 35%. And we are not an exception. This is going to occur all over Europe and developed countries. And even countries like China and so on will have the same process. So this aging, it means that it will be an increasing demand for health services. So general conclusion, health cluster will be increasingly important both in quantitative and qualitative terms, and this is also valid for a central region. I will give you a very short glimpse of the region. You see the map. It is in the middle, as the name indicates. It's in the center of Portugal. It is between the two big metropolitan areas of Porto and Lisbon. In contrast with these two metropolitan areas, there is not a big metropolitan center in this region. It is a polycentric region. The biggest city is Coimbra, but is very, very smaller, much smaller than either Porto or Lisbon. But Coimbra is an important center for the health cluster. It has the oldest university in Portugal. It started in the 13th century. And it has a very old medical school and strong research, and both in medicine and in paramedical sectors, also in pharmaceuticals. So Coimbra is a very important center for health. Close to Coimbra, there is a technological park which is related with health, which is Biocante in Catanhedo, a little to the northwest of Coimbra. Also, I want to mention the city of Covilhã. Curiously, has some similarity with Lille because it is an old textile city with enormous decline of the textile sector, and the recovery was made with university in the city, and mainly with the opening of a faculty of medicine. So it is in the interior of Portugal, which has huge problems of population decline. So it's overlapping the general population problem of the country. There is a special problem in these interior regions because it is losing population since the 19th century. The percentage of young people is very low. The decline is very strong. And so centers which counteract this decline, like Covilhã, is very important. And where is this university center? And also want to mention Aveiro. Aveiro is the only clinical center in Portugal, one of the 9, but is the only one which has no medicine faculty. There's no medicine course, but is very strong in a lot of ancillary sectors, both in paramedicals, but also in research for biology, biotechnology, software and hardware equipment, for example, imagiology and things like that. So it is quite strong in many things which are around the health cluster. So it's the reason why it could create one center like this without not having Faculty of Medicine. And spread all over the region, there is a lot of cities with polytechnic schools, which make a lot of paramedical courses and research and services. And so this is the picture of the Central region. What is the conclusion? Coimbra is a relatively important center, but both the overall size of the region is only 2.2 million inhabitants. Is too small to be a very important center over the world, and the only solution is to work like a like a cluster, a polycentric region where different places play different roles, but are complementary roles. So if you look at the map I showed before, and if all these centers work together, then we can start to say that we are relatively important and relatively big. It is one of the roles of the Central Region government to encourage this networking concept and the idea that this networking is important, both between these regions, but inside these regions. So the academical clinical centers are institutions which try to develop the interaction between learning, research, and economic activities. Not only hospitals, clinics, and things like that, but also the industry which can work in for the health cluster. In a moment where Europe wants to be more independent of supplies from China and other countries, the crisis of COVID showed that we had a lot of things which were completely dependent on other parts of the world, and we could not answer immediately to the problems because we had no production capacity. So to have production capacity on the health cluster, it is something very important. So I'm speaking about pharmaceuticals, but also a lot of clinical devices and research related with materials, with new forms of production, for example, additive production, and the new materials is something, 3D printing is something very important for many medical appliances and components. And so it's important that medicine, paramedicals, and research is strongly connected with the sectors which can provide both services and instruments and equipments to the sector. I also want to mention the importance in Portugal of tourism and health, in my opinion, will be increasingly connected. I'm not expert, but I heard that Portugal is a very good center, for example, for recovery of cancer diseases, because in some places, parts of the country, the good climate, the poor air, the pure air, and so on, can make a lot of help for these people. So health tourism. Also, tourism for elderly people, which is going to increase enormously, which must be close to good health services, are important elements for Portugal and the Central region, because they are also sectors which are going to increase a lot. So it is the perspective of the health as a key element of developing our region in Portugal, and to say that these centers, the clinical centers, can be fantastic instruments to increase not only the cooperation between themselves, but the cooperation with the firms, with the enterprises, with the production, to make the Central region as a region with strong competitive advantages in this sector. I say that all the regions, but the Central region, in its strategic research and innovation for a smart specialization, which is a set of programs for all over the European regions, puts the health cluster, gives to the health cluster a very important role. So with 4 points, which are key elements of this strategy, meaning that investments trying to be financed by operational programs of the European framework are highly favored if they are connection to these for either one or several of these 4 items. Innovation for promotion and prevention of health and well-being. So in this case is also education for health, is improving healthy lifestyles, is all kinds of strategies for prevention of diseases, and so on. So this is a sector which is important, mainly on the side of teaching and on the side of research. Innovative systems for early diagnosis. Here it is research, but it's also the results of research to the productive sector. New treatments and therapies, it's both research and the consequences in terms of our services, health services. So if the health services which are around the very many places of the region can be used as trials for new techniques of treatments and therapies, it's important because both sides gain. And fourth, innovative solutions for active and health aging. So you can see that health cluster, it's a key element. We pay a lot of attention to the health cluster. We think it is a key element for progress in the central region and in the country. Under this perspective, we think that clinical academic centers are important institutions, are important institutional solutions which improve cooperation, which improve synergies, and which can help the region to be to have strong competitive advantages in the future economy of the European Union, and to help the country to move in the direction of the most developed countries, which is not our our final goal. This is what somebody which has no specialization at all in health sciences can say, looking from the social and economic perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eduardo, for putting everything in context and for bringing up as an example one region of Portugal, the center region. Thank you so much. We come now to our third and last speaker in this session, Stephen Cantor. And Stephen will be talking about partnerships between the academic health centers as promoters of innovation and of collaboration. So, Stephen, the screen is yours, please.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here, and warm greetings to everyone from Washington, D.C. I'm really delighted to spend a few minutes with you to talk about the importance of academic health centers and how academic health centers can work together to generate new ideas that lead to valuable advances in health and healthcare. So the 30-second version of my talk is this. It is critically important for academic health centers to work together. Working together is how we rapidly share ideas and innovations, how we influence policy and legislation, and how we make sure that our communities and the public and the people we serve know how important is the work we do. And that is why the Association of Academic Health Centers International exists. So that's the 30-second version of my talk, and I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about why universities and hospitals joined together to form academic health centers in the first place. Next slide, please. Academic health centers are defined a little bit differently in different areas around the world, but in general, an academic health center includes the items on this list: a school of medicine, which is often described as the anchor of an academic health center, a main teaching hospital, sometimes more than one, a research enterprise, and other health profession schools. And the nature, not yet, please go back, the nature of the relationships among these entities varies. Sometimes a university owns the medical school and the hospital, sometimes neither owns the other, but there's a well-written affiliation agreement between them, and sometimes there are other arrangements. As an academic health center grows and forms more relationships with other hospitals in other locations in the community, sometimes it becomes called an academic health system, and in some countries they use the phrase academic health network. The important point, though, is regardless of how the relationship is structured, regardless of who owns whom, hospitals and medical schools want to build strong relationships because it's those relationships, if structured properly, that lead to better doctors, better scientists, and better patient outcomes, and even to the development of new drugs and devices, new companies, and economic growth for a region. Next slide, please. So let me ask you a question. Which image best depicts what you aim to build? Or what image best depicts your current institution? Is it based on silos that do not really communicate well with each other, like the image labeled A? Or is it based on well-formed interlocking relationships among the various units, like the image labeled B? It is hard work to move from A to B, but the rewards are very valuable. And I hear from the past two presentations that you are making good progress moving toward B. If your institution is like the image labeled A, it's very hard to generate new ideas. So it's very hard to promote innovation, and it's very hard to improve health. If you build an institution like the image labeled B, you create an environment in which new ideas are more likely to develop. There are good relationships that help you use those new ideas to develop innovative therapies and products that lead to better health, that then lead to new jobs, and then lead to economic growth. Next slide, please. So people talk about alignment of academic health centers, and alignment is the degree to which component parts of academic health centers work cohesively. Full alignment allows academic health centers to act quickly and cohesively toward common goals. We have a program at AAHC, the Association of Academic Health Centers, called the AIM program, which is designed to help institutions achieve better alignment. And I listed a reference at the bottom of the slide that is a great example of how alignment can lead to better outcomes. Next slide, please. Here are 10 reasons, some of which you heard in the prior two talks, why it is valuable to develop academic health systems and why it is so valuable for them to work together. Number one, to stimulate economic growth. Number two, attract new talent to the region. Number three, to help move discoveries to the marketplace. Number four, to create new jobs locally. Number five, to reinforce the complementary roles of research and teaching. They each make the other better. Number six, to catalyze intellectual cross-fertilization, which leads to innovation, which leads to economic growth. Number 7, to support the kind of risk-taking that leads to new ideas. You have to take risks to generate new ideas. Number 8, to cultivate individual potential, very important. And number 9, to develop trusted health tourism destinations. And number 10, to establish a culture of excellence at the nexus of health, education, and science. AICIB brings institutions together, and by working together across borders and across traditional boundaries, we can achieve these goals faster and better. Next slide, please. On this slide, I have a few of the issues that have been highlighted recently by our members at various programs and conferences and in some of our publications. I won't go through all of them, but I'd like to point out cybersecurity is certainly an important challenge, more and more in the health sector, and we've developed some materials to help leaders of academic health centers approach that in better ways. I would also point out that we are seeing new leadership roles created in academic health centers, and we keep our eye on what is happening there. For example, we are seeing more chief innovation officers at academic health centers. We even have seen a chief medical social media officer, which of course has to be a young person by definition. Next slide, please. AICIB mobilized best practices, ideas, resources, and partnerships to promote innovation in health. And some examples of what we do are listed on this slide. I won't go through everything, but I will point out that we've recently held a series of thought leader panels which bring together top decision makers at academic health centers around the world to explore a critical issue. And through these thought leader panels, we knew very early in the pandemic what top leaders were thinking and doing, and we were able to quickly share that information with other members. I'm going to go through this, but we're happy to provide these slides if you'd like to look at them further. Next slide, please. We have something called AAHC Spotlight, which is a web-based tool that highlights key accomplishments of academic health centers. And you can see here a slide highlighting some accomplishments related to COVID-19 as they were occurring around the world. Next slide, please. AICIB has a global footprint. Currently, there are 5 regional offices with opportunities for leaders of academic health centers to be regional ambassadors, to develop leadership in their region, and to help promote relationships between academic health centers across borders. Next slide, please. Every spring, we hold the Global Innovation Forum, and this year we held a partner summit. And I just want to point out that this year's forum was very successful, and the feedback we received from attendees was that 92% reported that they generated new ideas from attending this meeting. We also, as part of the Partner Summit, developed a database of partnership profiles with academic health centers, and currently there are 40 profiles in the database, and we'd be delighted to provide more information about that. Now I would like to just take a moment to do something a little different and ask an interesting question, which is, what can we learn from the field of ecology? So next slide, please. So bear with me for a minute as I tell you that ecatones is an interesting concept in the field of ecology. An ecotone is a place where two different ecosystems meet and integrate. It's a place of transition. It can be between land and the sea, between the forest and a meadow, between a rainforest and a beach. It's a place where ecologies are in tension. And interestingly, when you look at these areas that are between two different ecosystems, they're not quiet. Instead, they are characterized by diversity, by dynamic activity, even new species, animal and plant species that you don't see in either ecotone on either side. Next slide, please. So I want to ask the question, where are the ecatones in an academic health center, and where are the ecatones between or among academic health centers? But you can find ecatones between medicine and nursing, between basic science and clinical care, between primary care and specialty care, academia and industry, even between evidence and tradition, and certainly between teaching and learning. And I would ask, how often do we see barriers between these areas instead of seeing ecatones that are rich with possibilities? Next slide, please. Ecatones, no, go back one, please. Ecatones can be easy to see, or they can be very difficult to recognize. Now, the image on the right side of the slide has appeared in several of my slides before. And I wonder if you noticed that it is an ecotone. Note the transition at the top third of the slide, which is different from the bottom. Next slide, please. The area above the green shaded rectangle has mainly conifer trees. The area below the green shaded rectangle has mainly hardwood trees. And in between is a transition area in which there is a lot of activity, different species coming together in new ways. And in that ecotone area, there is innovation and change. There are areas of change, areas of dynamic change all around us in an academic health center. We just need to look for them. And as we find them, we can do even greater things together. So thank you for the opportunity to visit with you. We at AAICI are ready to partner with you as you embark on these important journeys to be more competitive and in economic growth. And I look forward to working with you in new and exciting ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for your so clear and nice talk. I really appreciate your ecotones. So we are now entering a brief period of discussion. I don't know how our organizers will organize that. I don't know if we are receiving
Professor Elena
from the public. Yes?
Professor Elena, from YouTube, we don't have any questions here yet.
Okay.
I don't know if someone in the audience wants to put a question.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. My question, I would like to ask this question. I would like to thank everyone, all the speakers, for excellent talks. I'd like to ask Professor Frédéric Gautran, something about his experience in Lille. And you've shown us an amazing construction of interactive work with some focus on research mainly, but of course bringing together the different institutions that comprise the clinical academic center. However, in terms of the problems that may arise, you mentioned that some of the problems may have to do with some of the I would say people on directory boards of the different institutions may change, and then the policy may also change. So I'd like to ask you, what safeguards do you have in order to overcome that sort of potential threat and problem? And also whether what you have brilliantly shown us regarding research also applies to the other components and integration with clinical care and also teaching. I would also like to ask Professor Cantor, and thank you for an admirable talk, something about the Association of Academic Health Centers. And I was just wondering about the international component of the association, with a specific focus in Europe. I would like to know whether that, in your opinion, whether there has been significant collaborative work on the part of different clinical academic centers in Europe, or whether there's still a long way to go in that regard. Thank you very much.
Please, Frédéric.
Thank you very much for this question, and it's a quick question. First a comment. I really love Stephen's this ecotone image, because when I look back to my presentation, I'm moving in an ecotone at every time, and this question is really in this time. The point is, of course, one of the difficulties we have is we are dependent of people, and when a new CNO for our hospital is coming, it takes me, because I'm here for a long time, to at least 1 year before he understands the different word in research, because we are all speaking in acronym. There is a lot of history, and not everything is evidence-based, and our system is very complicated. And we are a few people belonging to all this world. The dean, for example, is also a medical doctor at our university hospital. Most of the research vice president of the university faculty, people from the national research bodies have also 2 employers, and it's a chance, it's a difficulty and it's a chance. So we are always dealing with new ideas of new people coming on. And for example, a CNO for an hospital in Lille in France is changed every 3 to 5 years. So you have 1 year starting all things again every 5 years. So it's a lot of job, but at the end, this new guy or woman brings new ideas, will have new inputs, and it's like your image of ecotone. It brings us to move a little bit and don't stay at the same place with all our priority, all our rules, which are built along the time. So it's a force and also limitation of our system. So I agree fully.
So, Stephen, could you make some comment to the question that was made to you?
Yes, and thank you. I think there are a number of good and really strong collaborations in Europe. And I would also say, yes, there is more work to do. You know, a key challenge for all of us is what people call innovation diffusion, or diffusion of innovation. You know, how do we move the best ideas quickly and rapidly throughout a country or even a continent or beyond so that people benefit. And, you know, one of our goals is to bring top leaders of academic health centers together and put the right questions on the table to stimulate those discussions. Right before the pandemic started in February of 2020, we held a meeting in Brussels, and we had really interesting conversations about cybersecurity and about other issues, approaches to that, so that top leaders have an opportunity to share confidentially the challenges they're facing with their own boards, with their own leaders, with their own governments, and share ideas about how to approach that. So yes, good relationships, and yes, a lot more to do.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Maybe we have another question from the audience.
We don't see anyone with interest in making any questions right now.
May I myself make one question while we wait for further questions from the audience? So my question is for a comment of Stephen. With your experience, what would you advise Portugal to do? We are, of course, not very much developed in experiencing these partnerships between these three vectors of the system. So we need to in fact to build up more ecotones. So what do you think should be the priority in developing this interaction between these three vectors? So the teaching, the research, and then the clinical aspect, the hospital aspects, for instance.
Yes, if I understand the question, are you saying that it is a challenge to bring leaders on the university side together with leaders on the hospital side, or something different?
Well, both. What do you think is more important?
Well, yeah, I would say it's really important to have regular meetings, and we have helped some institutions in some countries do this, where we come in and help bring the leaders of both together and help find common ground. And a lot of times people struggle with how, if you're head of a hospital, someone might say, how does it help me to have medical students in my hospital? Does it just slow me down, or does it really help me? And we can facilitate those conversations. There also sometimes are issues of how finances are structured. And, if you look at academic health centers in the United States, sometimes you see money moving every which direction. But sitting down and approaching that and rationalizing the financial structure can also help better communication and bring groups together. So there are things like that we do. We also find that it's very useful to bring together in small groups, like maybe 10 or 12 people, bring together a few leaders of academic health centers in a country with a few leaders from around the world. It really opens up some new kinds of thinking and new ideas when we do that.
Yeah, Yeah, thank you, Stephen. It's really a great advice. Do we have questions?
May I say something?
Yes, Eduardo, please.
I think the cooperation between, or these ecotones between the different components of the health system is important, but and mainly in regions like our region, it's also important the cooperation between the different health centers, which is also very difficult because there are some competition, rivalry, different traditions. For example, between universities and all traditional universities and so on, it's very difficult. But also because of the size of the economies of scale, there is not a single center in the central region which can have the capacity or the size to do everything. So if the centers can cooperate, they can make much more rich environments and to reach many more fields that if they do it alone. It's my comment.
Yes, may I comment again?
Yes, yes, please.
One of the challenges is, I think if you can convince a group of leaders, centers, that they share a future together. Once people agree that they share a future together, then they must do two things. They must plan for the future and they must solve problems together. And so that's an approach we have used before, is starting out by understanding that we really do share a future together and what that means and what that involves. And then once we get to that point, then obviously we need to plan for that future and we need to learn how to solve problems. The better we solve problems together, the more progress we can make, the quicker we can become competitive, the quicker we can stimulate economic growth.
May I add myself a comment?
Frederick. Please do, please do.
I think it's very even more difficult to have a clear and good collaboration between different centers in different areas, rather than reaching to give synergy and consensus within the same campus on the same region. And I think the only way is to have a win-win strategy. So, for example, our hospital is big and we have another university hospital not so far, 100 kilometers. And relationships are very difficult because we are bigger, we are stronger because we are more people working, not because they are bad, and it's very, very difficult to reach really good and real relationship between both of them. And one, I think one practical thing is to find a way where both will win something and not putting together and giving to the other something, and at the end have the fear to lose something. And I will give just an example. There were a call for early phase of cancer in our region, and this call was competitive. And at the beginning, the hospital dealing with cancer in our campus and my university hospital at the end did not agree. All of them wanted to be the leader of this call. So at the end, my hospital sent an application, and this hospital just close 2 kilometers send an application. And we lose together. They lose and we lose. Because the jury say, oh, they are no way to collaborate, so I will not give money to any of them. So the next year, because we failed, because people were set around the table, and in the end, we reach a consensus and we send one application and we win the application and the call. So I think all of the parties have to win something, unless it's only a dream.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you are totally right, Frederick. Some question from the audience?
Sorry?
Any question from the audience?
Yes, we have one question.
Please.
Yes, I have one question. Well, collaborative work among clinical academic centers has been put forward, and we firmly believe that is very important. My question is for Professor Anselmo de Castro, and that is, well, we know that clinical academic centers are part of the health clusters, and it is very important to stimulate their development. And of course, in my view, that also involves such collaborative work among different academic centers. Now, would a regional development coordinating center also have to play a role in setting up, well, I wouldn't say guidelines, but promotion of such collaborative work? Should it be translated into guidelines or promoting, sponsoring and funding for work that involves more than one institution? Should that also be a role of the community as represented by the development coordinating centers? Thank you.
Okay, first, we are not going to take the leadership of this. We cannot, but we can. I think we can help. We can help reacting, for example, when there are good ideas or good proposals, to support them and to give all kind of help we can do. I think I can make you this example. There was not a university, but a firm or association of firms which launched the idea that we should try to start an organization to certify medical devices. This is a very difficult competition. This is a very difficult progress, but our region, we contact the 3 universities, and we said to universities, look, this is too much for any one of you to do it alone. But if you do this thing together, and if you put the headquarters of this in the city of Covilhã, because it is an interior, there is a program in the country to develop the peripheral regions and to help peripheral regions, perhaps you have a chance. And now the 3 universities are on board. And we try to do this. It's called notified organization to certify medical devices. It's a long process. It's a difficult process. It has to be approved by a European board, but we are doing this process. And the 3 universities are, which several times are not easy to make them to cooperate because rivalries and so on. The other 3 are very happy to participate in this. This is one example. Other example is that we think that we should do something in terms of stimulating the contacts between research and the industry. And we think in the future to launch 1 or 2 per year, 1 or 2 special projects, which we think should be only accepted projects made by more than one of these centers. It's not only on health, it can be in other things, but one of the conditions is that more than one university or polytechnical school should be in the call. So we trying to, first, we help if you do things together. Or in some cases, we can take the initiative and say, look at this opportunity, why shouldn't we try to do this? And this is the way I think our region can do, or other regions can do this.
Mm-hmm. Some more questions from the audience?
I don't think so.
And neither from the YouTube viewers?
No, we don't have any questions on the YouTube chat.
Okay, thanks. I don't know if you, Frederic, Eduardo, Stephen, want to add some comments more to these matters? If not, I warmly thank you again for being with us. I'm sure everyone learned a lot from your interventions. Thank you so much for helping us develop our system. Bye-bye. Thanks again, and see you in the future. Maybe physically.
Oh, yeah.
Bye-bye.
We prefer. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you all. There was a small change in the program. We will skip the break that was scheduled and continue with the conference on clinical academic centers networking in Europe. Should we create a European Association of Clinical Academic Centers, which will be presented by Axel Radlach-Fries, President of the World Health Summit. As moderator, we will have Manuel Sobrinho Simões, Coordinator of the National Council of Clinical Academic Centers.
Hello, Manuel. Do you hear me?
Oh, I'll say, good. Okay, so I'm sorry, I did not push the thing. So it's we are finishing now the day. It has been very, very successful, and of course we miss to have people. It's so few people now, but hopefully they are listening somewhere in the world. Now we are going to discuss a very important point, which is the possibility of creating a network of clinical academic centers. And it is very difficult to find somebody that's more adequate to be the chairperson and the lecturer of this afternoon is Professor Radlach-Fries, because he really is a big shot. So he is professor of physiology. He has been dean of the Institute of Physiology, and now is Dean of Charity University. He is a world West expert in microcirculation and in cardiology. And besides being anything, I mean, he has been doing so many things. It's very, very impressive. He has been, for a while, he has been the president of the Biomedical Alliance in Europe, and nowadays is really the president of the World Health Summit. So, Professor, it's your floor, and I'm very glad that you are here, and of course I'm sure that we are going to learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Manuel, for these very, very kind words, overstressing the achievements. But as you all know, guiding scientific institutions is a form of service to make it possible that everyone can work to its best capacity. And I think this is also the underlying rationale for the question, should we create a union or a liaison between the clinical academic centers in Europe? And the question is, in principle, simply answered. Europe is in need of a strong alliance, and university hospitals have a unique role, not only nationally, but on the European level and beyond. And we need that to contribute to the upcoming establishment of a European Health Union. And I will try to give a few aspects of this, of these statements. And Steve Cantor has presented you with very, very elaborate and relevant considerations with respect to this topic. And I will only try to focus on a few of these specific issues. There are already examples for unions of health, academic health centers or networks of academic health centers. I will start on the left side with a national network in Germany called the Verband der Universitätskliniker, which was created some time ago, but right now it, for instance, formed a network reflecting to the COVID pandemia, and then on the European level, and I will come back to that a little bit later, is the European University Hospital Alliance, and on the worldwide level, linked to the World Health Summit, is the M8 Alliance, which is now roughly 30 partners all over the world. And as it was said in the previous discussion, there's always a question between these centers of the competition between different academic institutions on one hand and the need for cooperation on the other hand. And both of these items have a very relevant role. You need competition to find the best solutions to individual questions, but you need cooperation to find the best solution for serving the public at large, serving patients, and serving the EU. And so the three topics I will talk about are first the question whether there is a need for better networking of university hospitals. Then the second one is why should university hospitals play a special role? What makes them special in the European arena, but this is also true on a worldwide level. And then what can we do for more collaboration? And there I will allude on an example, the European University Hospital Alliance. And so for the first question, it's again the topic of cooperation versus competition. Here you see ants, and they work together to bridge a gap which no individual animal could bridge. And as an African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And in the medical research and health provision, it's always a long journey, so you always have to go far. So there is a urgent need to go together. And there are some very relevant challenges which we all have to address, and we all have to deal with items which question the very foundation of what we are doing. Globalization is a very clear mover of many things. It's a threat to many people, but it's also a positive development in very many areas. Then there are demographic changes, especially in developed countries. People are getting much older. We have to deal with that. There are economic pressures. Climate change will change more or less everything in the next 20 or 30 years. And digitalization is changing many things right now. So all of these hospitals which are dealing with everyday questions of how to teach young people and how to provide best healthcare to the patients, in the background, they have these common challenges, and quite often they don't have time and resources enough to really prepare themselves for the future. And that's much easier if you do it with some other people who have similar challenges. Specifically in Europe, the upcoming European Health Union will strongly affect our work. There are a number of developments within this European Health Union, the European Medicines Agency, the to be established HERA process to deal with emerging health threats, and so on and so forth. And this again is an area where an individual university hospital has a very hard time to stay on top of all developments, and even a harder time to influence these developments, because there are new regulations in Europe, for instance, the data protection regulation, which affects our everyday work, but we are much too weak to even inform the process when these kinds of regulations are prepared in Brussels. And alone, a single university hospital cannot dream to make sure these regulations fit their purposes. And besides data protection, there are new regulations with respect to approval of procedures, devices, diagnostics, and all of these have very imminent effects and even threats on our everyday business in research and education and health provision. So the question is, what makes university hospitals unique? Why should university hospitals acquire to play a special role in the overall health context? Well, the university hospitals have the same mission, more or less. We are all educating the next generation of healthcare professionals, be it future doctors or nurses or technical staff, and the spectrum of difficult studies is enlarging all the time, but we are the ones who provide the cutting-edge education based on science, based on research, to all these people who sit here in one of our older lecture halls and listen, obviously, very intensively to an anatomy lesson. And the second area where we are all active is we are not only providing patient care, but we are improving patient care through research. So for the university hospitals is this link between the patient care of today and the patient care of tomorrow, and this link is education and research. So the university hospitals, based on this kind of boundary conditions, are major players in healthcare. We are high-end providers, like, for instance, Charité in the pandemic was the hospital of first, or as it's, you could also say last resort in terms of COVID treatment, and the very severe COVID cases were transferred to Charité, and that's very similar with many other university hospitals. They have a long-standing expertise with health provision, also on a larger scale, and not only for care, but also for all the environment which we need to establish, from testing like vaccination strategies and so on and so forth. And in this environment, COVID is only an example. On the upper left, you see that the German Minister of Health gets his vaccination at the Charité place, obviously by our hospital director himself. The university hospitals are unique since they are drivers of innovation or translation. We combine the basis to develop new ideas and new technologies, and to bring them into the clinical arena over the many steps from experimental studies to technology transfer. We need external partners, let's say for drug development and manufacturing, that's clear, but we are a major driving force. And the driving force is not only because we do the translation from left to right, but because we are able to stimulate the basic science and new idea generation by confronting these people with a medical need. So it's a full circle. It's not only from left to right, but it's also from right to left, where the medical need informs future experimental studies. And this is something which cannot be done outside from university medical hospitals. You can have technology companies, you have big pharma and so on and so forth, but the full loop where you get the feedback from the medical need, that's typical for medical hospitals. And in this process, we also educate future generation of healthcare workers in all the different professions and with interprofessional skills. And that's something which is also unique to university medical hospitals. It's not done in high-end care providers, and it's not done in the industry. Then there are things which are more on a like operational basis, but it's relevant. It's relevant that we are non-for-profit organizations. We might have areas where we make money by obviously treating patients and maybe also by educating and so on and so forth. But overall, we don't make money out of it for our shareholders. We use it for further research, for further education, for enlarging our structural basis. So we have a special role in one of the biggest economic sectors in Europe, but also worldwide, the health economic sector. But in the health economic sector, we are a major player, which is non-for-profit. And we are also very international in comparison to the high-end health providers in our countries. Health provision and the health systems in the European countries are very diverse. There are big differences in even neighboring countries. In Germany, we have a lot of specialists in private practice. In the Netherlands, they are in the university hospitals. So it's very different from country to country, what is reimbursed and how it is reimbursed and what are the schemes. But the science is international. All university people go to international conferences. They speak at international conferences with their peers over the world. They publish in international journals, and it's very relevant for Europe that we bring it together, because the health systems are still very national or on a very national basis. But science and medical provision and diseases or viruses, they don't respect borders. So being international and looking at these items from an international perspective is very, very relevant, and that's best provided by university hospitals. So in summary of this is we all do education, research, we are internationally minded, we do high-end patient care, we are non-for-profit, and most of us are state-funded. And from these items comes a number of characteristics. So we bear a large responsibility for what we are doing, because we get our money from the states, and we are institutions for the benefit of the population at large. So we have a high responsibility. We also have a high competence based on our research and the teaching, and together we get a lot of trust from the public, because they know we know what we are doing, and we are not doing it in principle for money. But on the other hand, we are very fragmented. there is not a very strong backbone to bring us together, to raise a common voice and to be heard. And as a consequence, we are underrepresented on the European level because we much too often act individually and alone and not as a team. So what can we do to change this? And it is not yet, I don't have a conclusive answer here because there is no very strong movement at the moment which could bring all the European hospitals together in this sense, the European academic hospitals together. There are only examples. Therefore, I will talk a little bit about this example, which is the European University Hospital Alliance. And in 2017, 9 leading university hospitals came together and formed an alliance. So you could ask the question, why didn't we include everyone? Why didn't we open it up initially? And the reason is that these 9 hospitals considered it easier to start an initiative with not too many partners and with the option to move a little bit faster at the beginning of the journey. But as you see on the lower left, we are expecting to expand membership soon after we have established a few internal roles. And in the following slides, I will show a little bit about what this group is doing. So the vision is to build a network to achieve a better patient outcome, but also to lobby on the Brussels level. If you look at the third bullet point, it's advise policymakers, and that is only possible if you are heard, and that is only possible if people in Brussels know you are relevant. So there's a mutual interaction of size and power to influence decisions on the European level and vice versa. Obviously, we also share practice examples and collaborate, and I will give you a few examples of the areas where we do that. So the European University Hospital Alliance has 3 major action areas. One is healthcare, one is research and education, one is strategy and management. And here, for instance, an example in the healthcare arena linked to lobbying on the Brussels level. We have been advising the European Commission with respect to pandemic management, and that was heard by Ursula von der Leyen, for instance, and you see in the upper right is a very small picture of a letter which Ursula von der Leyen did send to the UHA, responding to a suggestion which the UHA made on pandemic management. Sorry. Another example is research and education, which is obviously the basis of what we are doing. So we talk a lot about the research and education part, and we have a Dean's meeting especially for this purpose. And for instance, that's the first bullet point in the gray box. We are very heavily working on increasing the standards for research in a responsible research and innovation initiative, which is joined by all the members, where we try to improve the reliability and the credibility of research results. But we also have, if you look at the third bullet point, very concrete measurements or measures. One is to create a European Center for Gene and Cellular Cancer Therapies as a virtual institute between the partners. So we are not building something, rather we are exchanging expertise and approaches and knowledge and people for a joint project. And I think this could be a very good and strong partner for industry, because each individual hospital is relatively weak compared to the power which larger industry partners can have. But if we have a network and can combine and pull together all the expertise and the resources in many of our members, then we are really at a level with the big industry partners in a very relevant area like cell and gene therapy. In the strategy, we have an example here where we exchange people between our institutions, because they learn more from the approaches they can see in other institutions, and this is relevant both for clinicians in training. It's also relevant for non-clinical staff, and for researchers that happens automatically. Many researchers have their stages in other countries and learn from other labs, but for clinicians and for non-clinical people, it's much more rarely done, and therefore to stimulate this will increase the broader view, and what works very well in Portugal may work very well also in Germany or in the Netherlands, and vice versa. So we need to foster this exchange to make sure that the healthcare provision uses the best possible examples from all over Europe. So European clinical academic centers, in kind of a conclusion, have many shared challenges and would be stronger together. And we did discuss that during the talk, but what I can't provide you here is an answer how we will do that. So what should we do? Should we come up with a larger network in Europe, maybe based on the UHA principle, or based on the AAICIB approach? So there are different approaches to do it, and I think we should continue this discussion in Europe and find out a proper way to create a strong, flexible, and active union or network or group of university hospital centers in order to be heard on a European level, and in order to provide the best possible environment for our patients, and in order to develop the best possible medical options for the future. There are a number of areas where these networks would be or should be active. One very relevant and timely area is the European Health Union. We should be there to inform our politicians in Brussels what we want and require and need to be established in the European Health Union. If you can consider the number of lobbyist people in Brussels coming from industry, be it medical devices or pharma industry, compared to the people who are voicing the need from the medical arena, that's a very strong imbalance. As it was said, I was the president of the European Biomed Alliance, which is an umbrella organization for all medical societies like the Cardiology Society, Neurology, Oncology, and so on and so forth. So altogether, these societies have 400,000 members, and it's fairly powerful societies. In Brussels, this whole group has a workforce of about two and a half persons. So a very large and powerful and relevant sector of the health economy tries to lobby with 2.5 persons and also construct their scientific activities and so on and so forth. If you compare that with the health industry, be it large hospital chains, pharmaceutical industry, device industry, it's absolutely pathetic. It's a minimal number. So we need to work together to get a stronger voice in Brussels. And I think the patients will trust us a long way, because as we are non-for-profit, we share common interests, and in principle, our interest is very much joined with the population interest. So if you look to the upper left, the European Health Union, there are imminent questions like what should the upcoming HERA structure, the Health Emergency Response Agency, look like, and should it include research, how should it be guided, what should be the governance. And below there is a question which we discussed a lot in the Biomed Alliance: should there be a European Council for Health Research like the NIH in the US? Because the way health research is funded by the EU is often very or changes very often based on the election periods and similar stuff, and sometimes lacks the connection to the scientific and medical arena a little bit. So the Biomed Alliance was always arguing that we need something like a European Council for Health Research, but then this is seen very critically both by the national governments on one hand and by the European Commission on the other hand. And the reason for this criticism is quite often that these structures don't want to share responsibilities. But if we want to be strong on the European level, we have to do just that. And science is a very good partner, as represented by the European academic hospitals. Then we need to foster research collaboration, because all European countries, and especially individual academic hospitals, are small compared to what is happening in the US and increasingly in China. If we want to play a relevant role, we have to work together. Europe will not stay at the front of developments if we don't improve our internal structures. Similarly, we have to work together in teaching to get our next generations to the very top level, which was always a strong part of the European culture, to have very, very high level of teaching, and not a very costly level, but a very good level of teaching. And to the upper right, we need to be at the table to achieve all that which is seen on the left side. Therefore, we need networks in which we can collaborate and work together. With this, I would like to thank you very much and for your attention, and obviously I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Axel. It was very, very good, and I feel stimulated by your points. I must confess that I'm always troubled, because you see, you made the first point was very important, the hands. You can if you want to go with hands, you can go either you go alone and it's faster, but if you want to go longer, and it's crucial collaboration. And you know that I'm a pathologist, and pathologists tend to be very fragmented because we are too much. But it's true that we in Europe, either we understand that we collaborate or we are lost. And so I wonder if we have here some people that I'm sure that are stimulated, because we really need to collaborate. I understand I wonder if can I ask you a question? Because how do you, of course, we have always in background, we have this teaching thing, and how to cope the teaching thing. And, because university hospitals, they are really more whether we like it or not, the care patients is getting more and more important, as if it was possible to do this without teaching. And you cannot. I mean, you can do this today, but tomorrow you will not be able. So we have here a problem. The other problem as a pathologist, and I do cancer diagnosis, I also understand in Europe there is a very strong alliance in cancer comprehensive centers. How do you figure out to collaborate in a very positive way the university hospitals with the comprehensive cancer centers?
Well, I think it's very relevant that we keep these three pillars together. You say that it is difficult to combine the teaching with the patient work, and then there's a third pillar, the research. And I think we have to fight for a situation where we are allowed to do just this. Because if we, for instance, if we are compared with respect to our to the speed of our operations with hospitals who don't do any teaching and don't do any research, we cannot really compete. So we need additional funding to be able to provide the education. I was always talking with our surgeons, and they said, okay, we train a surgeon, and it takes us 7 years until this person is a perfect surgeon for hip and shoulder and so on and so forth. And training a surgeon is like training a violin player. You have to stand next to him and show him how to do it. So it takes you a lot of time. And once this person is ready and finished, private hospitals come and offer them the double pay and say, you don't have to do any teaching, no research, you get double of the money, you don't work on weekends, and it's heaven on earth. And then this person goes away, and we can try to train the next one. So this is kind of an unfair game. And I think we have to inform the regulations on the European level and inform the politicians that they see only with our teaching, they can have the top class surgeons in the future. You cannot have a tree and say, okay, I don't need the roots. For me, it's just the leaves and the fruit. I cut the roots, but then you will not have fruits in the next period.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have the same situation in Portugal, and it's probably the same everywhere. And it's very, very difficult. And this also we have is all the problem of residents, because in Southern Europe they start being, in a way, during the residency, they are already working in private institutions. Mm-hmm. So they do not work full-time, so to say, although it's theoretically full-time, but of course, because to survive, they get better salaries. And so we have a problem of teaching, that's true. So graduate or pre-graduate and graduate. And so I fully agree, and I must confess that I know that you have written lots of things about this, and I fully agree with your points. But for instance, you made us two questions, which how we go further. For instance, I don't know, could you please tell us something more about this HERA? Because I understand the European Council of Health Research, okay? But what about, I don't know what is HERA, so H-E-R-A.
Okay. So HERA is the Health Emergency Response Agency. So in principle, it is a reflection of the pandemic. People under the pandemic have seen that we are not properly prepared, so they want to build an agency to deal with that. And in the US, you have a similar agency called BARDA, which is a development and research agency also for health threats. And this is now on the agenda of the European Health Union program. But I think with respect to what is needed to avoid future health threats like pandemics, it is not enough to only look at defense and see how fast can you prepare vaccination. But if you look into vaccination, like the mRNA vaccination, Pfizer-BioNTech, it was lucky that they were at the point where they could switch from development into production pretty easily. But the development had been 10, 15, 20 years of heavy research in the past. So only on the fundament of heavy research for 20 years, you could create this fast response. And I think politicians tend to be relatively short-sighted in a way, and they say, okay, it's good enough if we support these companies to provide more vaccination. But if you don't invest in research right now, you won't have the solutions of tomorrow. It's like with an iceberg. The vaccination of today is a tip of the iceberg, but the research is underwater. And therefore, I think we need to inform the European Commission that we need HERA for the fast response, but we need also a much stronger and much more sustainable research support for the future.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you are absolutely right, I'm sure. So, do we have, yes, please.
Priest, thank you very much for a very interesting talk.
Yeah.
I would like to bring up the issue of advocacy in terms of clinical academic centres / university hospitals included in clinical academic centres. Because I do understand that, of course, we all know that's what we're striving to do. There are ample benefits in terms of having the integration and collaboration and very close work between the three pillars, clinical services being rendered, teaching / education and research. And that, I suppose, has been well shown and amply proven in terms of individual clinical academic centres. Now, I would just like to ask you, in terms of the expansion of the model in Europe, I don't think that many countries have this setting, which is well established, that of clinical academic centres, university hospitals within the setting of clinical academic centres. Is there a need for clear advocacy in Europe, I would say Europe-wide, so that we could strengthen the potential for collaborative work in a broader sense and in a wider sense as well? And I would also like to know how difficult it may be to get huge hospitals to embark on this. I mean, do they easily see the benefits of being involved in an alliance of such clinical academic centres? And my second question has to do with, as I mentioned, of course, I believe now there is evidence for individual clinical academic centres and university hospitals within such a context to really have improved in terms and strengthen translational work, clinical research, even teaching. But is there such an evidence for these international associations like the EUAJ? I'd really very much like to know whether, apart from what you have shown, whether there has been some real hard data that could support advocacy.
Tone in the room? No. Okay. So now it's much better. Larger hospitals can opt to provide high-end medical care at a minimal kind of expenditure, but then they can't do research and education. Like many private hospitals do it, there are big private hospital chains and they provide very good patient care, and they do it in a very economical way, and they don't do any research and education. So for the nations, for Europe, this is not a sustainable business model, because you need to have young people entering these areas, one hand, and you need to provide new options for patients. So it's quite clear that for the EU and for our national governments, this is not the only way to go. They need the roots of the tree if they want to have fruits in the future. So that's the viewpoint of our societies. Then you could ask the question, and you did ask the question, how interesting is it for the hospitals themselves? So for instance, the Charité Hospital in Berlin could opt and say, okay, let's drop education and research, let's just focus on optimal care. And we only hire people who have already their experience, and economically, this would make sense. But ethically, we wouldn't do it. And therefore, you need a certain kind of tradition, university tradition, in our institutions to keep this kind of holy grail alive, that we need to combine education, teaching, and research. And we need to convince our governments to say, we need you to do this, because otherwise we will run dry. And there have been countries in Europe which had a relatively low level of education in the medical field, because each medical doctor costs you like 200,000 euros or whatever in education. And they said it's easier to buy these doctors after they are finished. But it's not a sustainable business model. It is ridiculous. And therefore, as you said, Manuel, it's not so different from Portugal to Germany. It's the same question. And so I think there might be incentives for individual hospitals not to become academic, but I think we all have in Europe a very strong academic history in our bones, in our brains, and that's true in Portugal. It's true in Germany. It's true everywhere. So we will keep on providing education and research, because we know that it's needed, and we will always find enough people to do that. And that I can also give you an example from this surgeon education arena. There are surgeons, when they are studied, they go to these private hospitals, and they don't have anything to do on the weekends. They have a very clear time schedule, and their families are happy. But after a while, they are not happy, because they go there and do the hip transplant several times a day, and every week, and every year. And we have people who have very interesting brains. They are all personalities, and they want to do different things. They want to develop stuff. And therefore, there are quite a few younger or medium-aged doctors who say, okay, I know with you at Charité, I earn much less than I could do in private practice, but the environment is much more stimulating of what I can do with you as compared to other places. So I'm still optimistic that people are not only judging according to their individual budget, but according to their life. And for their life, it might be more interesting to get a little bit less paid, but much more interesting job. So I'm hopeful that we will survive, and we have a role to play. And the other question was, did the European Hospital Alliance already show success cases? Yeah, we are relatively young. It was 2017, and we have to come up with a with proper mechanisms. I think in this there are quite a few examples where it was already very beneficial for our institutions. So, for instance, our research grant managers, they did meet and exchanged their kind of mechanisms and how do they do it and what's best to do and so on and so forth. And you know that getting research grants nowadays is a very tricky business. So I think their departments did profit a lot. And the other thing where we are already quite advanced is this gene therapy, gene and cell therapy for cancer, where they did exchange a lot of their views and brought it to a European perspective. I guess that in the next 5 to 10 years we will be able to show more success stories, but there are starting examples of that it's worthwhile to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Axel, we have here another question from Katarina. Katarina, she's the big boss of this agency for. I mean, she's trying to get some people involved in evaluation of the clinical academic centers, because we have started a couple of years ago, and it's extremely heterogeneous regarding, and that's good, because they react to different interests and the conditions and so on. But we have a problem of dimension. And the point that Katarina is asking, how would you figure out the problem of networking in Portugal, for instance? The size of the clinical academic centers are extremely different, not only regarding. So how would you figure out the networking? Because I remember that you were talking about also something you called fragmented and underrepresented. So I'll do this.
Yeah, it's a typical European problem, and I think therefore we should be very good in Europe to deal with it. You have the same at the European level, where you have countries of very different size, and it's always a question: do you do a one-to-one representation? Does everyone have one vote? Liechtenstein and Poland, for instance, or do you divide it by the number of inhabitants, and Liechtenstein doesn't even have to travel to Brussels because they have more or less no vote, and it's all dominated by the big countries. And I think we need a kind of mix between both things. So for instance, if you want to create a network in Portugal and you have centers which are 10 times bigger than other centers in one group, and you will have the problem: do they all have a single vote, or do the big centers have 10 votes? And I guess you need a mixture of both, because a small center wants to be heard, and that's very relevant to be heard. And a big center has a slightly higher weight. So there must be questions where a big center has a little bit more voting power, but there are also questions where everyone has to be on board. It's not an easy problem to solve, and there's no simple answer to it. The only thing which we should learn from the EU example is that you should not install a mechanism where vetoing rights can prevent you from going on. And I think there was a problem when the EU was enlarged, that they kept the vetoing right. So even with things where, let's say, 18 from 19 members are in favor, a single member can prevent it from happening. And I think that's a problem. So you need a kind of a balanced majority voting system, and then everyone can be part of a team. It's like in a football team. Not everyone has to make the goals, but everyone has to work together. Otherwise, the team will lose.
Thank you. I think you made very good points, and as a matter of fact, I think there are some similarities also with Germany, with us, regarding the tradition of some very strong basis from the university. If I may, just a personal thing. You know, I was president of the European Society of Pathology between 1999 and 2001. And we were going to have the Congress in Berlin, September 2001. So I used to have the meetings in Charité in Virchow room. So the board of, I used to go there. And then I was there, and then the towers collapsed during the Congress of the European Congress. It was 11th of September, I was there, and the thing was collapsing. Sorry, this is a personal thing. Now, I don't know if we have some questions. If not, I just want to once more thank you very much, because we feel that we have a possibility, a fantastic possibility with health. It's very difficult to find a more stimulating thing than health. And I'm sure that if we are able to understand, as you said, that we just have the fruits, but the problem of roots, I have two problems. One is the fruits and the roots. I have another problem in Portugal, is that we don't have time protected for people that are working in university hospitals. They have to do all, you know, the surgery and so we have to have this, we have to protect them to have some time for research and to do teaching. You cannot. Without that, it will be a disaster, because they enter this. But if we are able to do this, I think that we will improve. And of course, I want to thank you very much, because we learned a lot. And it's fantastic to learn. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I thank you very much for having me here. I extend the very best greetings from Manfred Dietl, whom you probably know, our pathologist at the time. And I would be very happy to greet you in the virtual room every time at Charity when we can all travel again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We are already in the final straight of the session. We were expecting the Secretary of State for Health, but unforeseen events prevented him from being present. Let's hear the take-home messages, which will be presented by Miguel Castelo Branco, President of the Directory Board of the Clinical Academic Center of Beiras, and also the final message from José Páscoa, Vice-Rector of the University of Beira Interior.
So, good afternoon. I think we had a very interesting session, both in the morning and in the afternoon. We had remarkable talks by the invited guests, and it was very interesting to hear their point of views and their positions and also their suggestions. And that's also very important to take some message. And of course, it's very difficult to get when we have talked about so many things, to get some message that should be highlighted here. Well, one of the first things I should say is that the health cluster are very important for the economy, not only for well-being, but also for the economy of at all levels. And we are talking about regional, and national, and also global, and we can create regional, more great spaces like Europe or like any other kind of association. So it's important, and the role is going to increase, as we have heard. Then, regarding what we can do inside of the academic clinical centers, we should improve our relations between the clinical academic center participants, and we should, of course, improve the quality of what we do regarding education, research, and also care for the people. And regarding care, we should develop systems for awareness of the needs of the community at regional level, and also to have some solutions to involve patients in the decisions regarding care and the process of care. It was very interesting to hear about ecotomes, and we have ecotomes in our system. So we should improve the way we look at the ecoterms and improve the way we take the advantages of having them inside of process, and not looking at them as a problem, but looking at them as they are eventually one of the way we can get better solutions to improve the organization. Sorry for this. Of course, it's very important to, and this is a critical message, to improve the relations between the academical clinical centers. I think we already have a point of community when was created the Conseil National of Academical Centers, the National Council of Academical Centers, and it's a good starting point to have this kind, as was also talked in our 2 days ago meeting. Well, sorry, but it's not easy to networking between the academical centers. It's of course a need to use the individual competencies and creating better solutions and better advantages to use that kind of advantages at all levels, including the organizational level, and also in what comes to research. If we have a competence in one side and we have a competence in the other side, it's very important to get them together and create a better solution. We have the information regarding some experiences, what happens when we do not do that kind of agreements, and the opportunities that are open when we do it. Then, coming to an end, I think there is two more messages that have been presented. One of them is that we should also create a European system for clinical and non-clinical exchange between people that works in the clinical academic centers, and this could be a way of having exchange of information and also of knowledge. And then we probably have to work to have more weight on the decisions of the European level, the European organs from the European community, because we have heard that others have that kind of weight and that kind of influence, and eventually we have not, and so eventually this is one of the reasons why we cannot have some regulations that can have in concern some of our problems. Well, networking is, I think, the most important phrase of the day, and we should continue to work on creating and developing the networking. And I would use again the phrase that someone told us, that as we want to go far, we have to go together. So thank you very much for participating in this event, and have a rest of a nice day. Thank you.
Well, as I say, it's up to me to make the closer remarks. I will, of course, not take too much time. I will say that I have learned a lot. I'm not actually a vice rector from the area of health sciences, but using the instruments of research and the systematic tools for acquire of knowledge, we can today had the opportunity to witness a very, let's say, superstar panel of inviteds for this conference. I will also especially to thank Professor Miguel Castelo Branco for having the opportunity to prepare this panel altogether with Professor Catarina, that I think she was very much involved, and I was witnessing that in one of the first meetings that we had about this event. It has been a very long, strong day. I'm sure that everybody involved had the opportunity to learn a lot on this. I will say that finally, I will not agree with some of the panelists that say that we will survive. Well, in the long run, we will not survive. But your ideas and the impact that you caused during this event today will certainly survive. And this is the most important of this today event. So thank you very much for your work here today. And thank you also very much to all the attendees from the internet and also at national level, the ones that have made many miles to arrive here to Covilhã. Thank you very much, especially to Algarve. Thank you.
We reached the end of the session. We would like to thank the speakers and moderators, as well as those who were following this conference on clinical academic centers in Europe, challenges and opportunities online. Thank you very much.
No. Bem, just to give you some figures, because with most of the people we don't see them. In the morning we had someone around 168 participations during the morning, and during the afternoon we had around 130 something participations. Then, as an extension, Facebook reached around 500 people. So I think there's good figures, but even unfortunately we cannot see them. But we're looking forward to have meetings where we can see each other. Thank you very much.